We see negativity kicking in today, continuing from yesterday's bearish sentiments. What do you attribute that to?
Really, there are a number of factors that have affected the performance of the market in recent times. Firstly, there is the argument for profit taking. After so much gains at the beginning of the year, investors have decided to take some profits, and we've seen that. There's also the MPC meeting and the rate hike we saw from the CBN last week, and the sentiments that have been affected in terms of the hawkishness, the hawkish tone of the central bank and what it might mean for interest rates. And so investors have kind of taken a more cautionary stance on the market.
Okay, continuing on that tack, Seun, I mean, there are concerns about the potential rise in costs of borrowing, particularly on the interbank market with the hike in interest rates. You're suggesting it may have influenced investor behavior. To what extent will it continue to influence investor behavior going forward?
I think the market is more reactive to developments like this, unlike in the past where we had a disconnect between measures taken by the regulators and the market sentiment. Basically, this sentiment is not just exclusive to Nigeria. We have seen where rate hikes by the central bank in places like Brazil have caused the kind of negative sentiment towards the equity market. The Brazilian index has been down about 3% this year, and it's on the back of rate hikes and the outlook for higher inflation. Those same factors have also affected our market in some way. We have outlook for higher inflation because of higher food prices. We have supply concerns from regions such as Australia and even Brazil. And so when you have concerns like that, you expect that investors are going to take cognizance of that in pricing equities. And so I don't think it's going to be a sustained downward trend. I think investors are going to be looking at that end and factoring more into valuations.
I mean, obviously, this sort of thing could redirect funds into allocations, into cash, for instance, into fixed income assets away from equities. Is it too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon to tell. I think as these things like this normally play out, you first have a very prompt reaction at first, and people put it into perspective. I believe in the next few days we'll see some correction and we'll see some stability. I think it would be better to wait till then for people to put it in perspective. I don't think it's a sustained downtrend. As I said, I expect conditions to reverse in a few days.
Let's talk about AMCON. It's reported that they've decided to delay by 1 month the issuance of tradable bonds valued at over 1 trillion naira. Is that something to be concerned about?
Yes, I think it's something to be concerned about because a lot of analysts had already factored in the liquidity that the AMCON bond injection would have put into the system, and of course the loan growth that would have come as a virtue of that. Now they have consideration bonds. The bonds are not yet tradable, and so that limits the liquidity that can enter into the system. And of course, constrained loan growth will affect earnings in some respect. And so yes, of course, it's something to be bothered about. It's something that will get analysts looking back at their models, and of course, you have to reappraise the banks that are concerned.
Let's talk about this bearish sentiment and how it's impacting on sectors in particular. Obviously, the banks have taken a bit of a knock over the last few days. The brewery sector didn't fare particularly well yesterday. What we have seen is a downward revision on prices. Is that the trend today?
Yes, that's the trend today to some extent. Guinness was flat, but we saw Nigerian breweries dropping almost full percentage point, 5% in our market here. And of course, we've seen that bearish sentiment continue to spread. For the brewers in particular, there has been some concern about some like they were overpriced to some extent, and we've seen the correction in prices. But I think looking at the broad picture, the breweries sector still has a lot of positives going for it. When you look at the population of the country and the demographics, over 97% of Nigerian citizens are below 65 years. And so that all goes well. We have rising income. GDP was 7.85% last year. You have urbanization at 3.8%. So you look at all those things. You look at the trade-up from the regional segments to from the regional segments where locally brewed alcohols are being switched to beers. And you know that the brewery sector has a lot of growth ahead of it.
I mean, you echo the sentiments of many analysts who say that the fast-moving consumer goods sector is somewhere to be putting in your money, the brewers is somewhere to be putting in your money. But then it does raise the question of saturation point, you know. Is there enough supply of stock for increased demand, and how's that going to influence prices going forward, particularly for these hot stocks?
I think, yes, from both the demand and the supply side, we're seeing growth. The breweries have been expanding in recent times. Nigerian breweries, who is the subsidiary of Heineken, was involved in a deal recently to purchase Sona breweries, Sona Group, and adding 3.7 million hectoliters to its beer capacity in Nigeria. Guinness too have been expanding. We expect the brewery to have 6 million hectoliters by the middle of this year. And so, yes, I don't think it's going to reach a saturation point. I think the breweries are ready for the consumption that's supposed to hit the market. Nigerian beer growth has been 9% in volumes over the last 10 years. Right. And we expect this growth to continue largely. And we think that the brewery industry can grow about 42% in the next 5 years to reach about 24 million hectoliters by 2015. And
then in terms of stock picks, which are a buy? Obviously, you've spoken a lot about Nigerian breweries and acquisitions made by Heineken, but where else should investors be thinking about putting their money in terms of valuations, good prices, and just growth prospects?
For now, we're neutral on the breweries industry, and that's just a price thing. The breweries have rallied significantly. In the past year, both Nigerian breweries and Guinness gained over 50%, and this year too, they've appreciated to some extent. And we think Guinness still has some price appreciation, about 10% in our view from current price. But that said, we think there are opportunities across the consumer space. We're positive on Nestle. We like the investments that have been happening over the past years. And there's a new plant from Shagamu, which is supposed to double capacity. And we like the prospects for growth. It's a market leader. The products are well received. We think in the era where global food prices are increasing, it's a company that can pass on the increases to its consumers. Right. We like 7-Up too, and we'll be playing on those stocks.